Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation's LNTV. I'm your host, Mark Antelides, and today we're joined by Legal Affairs Editor, Mr. Scott D. Crescenzo. Welcome, Scott.
Hi, Mark.
So, Scott, there was a big decision on schools this week in the Supreme Court. Could you give us in a nutshell, what was the case and what were the implications of that?
Mark, the case is Espinoza v. Montana, and Montana had created a program whereby people could pay less money in taxes if they used that money to fund scholarships for Montanans. The program did not discriminate against schools that families could use the money for. And so some families tried to use that money to pay for religious schooling, private religious schools. The Montana Department of Revenue said that that was not allowed because Montana had a provision of its law that prevented basically any government monies from going to religiously affiliated organizations. And so Espinoza sued and wound its way up to the Supreme Court. And we do have a 5-4 decision which says that the free exercise clause of the Constitution prevents Montana from restricting those funds. If they want to give out money for people to be able to use in private schools, they can't say that those funds must only be used in non-religious schools.
So, as you mentioned, this was a 5-4 vote. What were the minority justices? What were they fearing here?
Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg went first because of her seniority position, and her minority opinion or dissenting opinion basically said that since the schools were the benefits of the funds, that it was impermissible to give them the money. And it was basically a sort of more of a procedural objection rather than Justice Breyer, who I believe Justice Kagan joined. And they all wrote that there seems to be the Constitution allows for this kind of discrimination, that the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. So the Establishment Clause says that government shall establish no religion, and the Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment says that we are able to be free in exercising our religion. Breyer says that there's some interplay, play in the joints, I think is the term that he uses, between those two things that would allow this sort of discrimination to be legal. Now, Justice Clarence Thomas spent the bulk of his decision discussing how the Establishment Clause made sense as directed against the federal government, which is how it was initially drafted, because at the time, many public schools, that is to say government schools, were religious. They were just ecumenically Protestant, sort of a non-specific Protestant denomination. And Justice Alito spent a lot of time talking about, now Thomas and Alito were both in the majority. It was Roberts, Thomas, Alito, Kavanaugh, and Gorsuch in the majority. And in the minority was Kagan, Ginsburg, Breyer, Kagan, and Sotomayor. And getting back to Justice Alito, he actually took a lot of time from his opinion to talk about how anti-Catholic bias was the motivator for these kinds of laws when they went into place to start with. So that's the history of it.
Scott, you spoke exclusively for Liberty Nation with the lawyer who actually won this case. I believe it was Richard Comer. He must have been thrilled to both argue and win at the Supreme Court. But what were his thoughts on the ramifications for school choice with this decision?
I did have a long conversation with Dick, and he was very happy about his win. It was his first case ever argued before the court. I asked him if it was the death knell of public schools, which some of the more histrionic tweets and sorts of things have foretold, and he didn't think so, Mark. He thought that the data actually shows that when public schools are forced to compete, they actually improve. And so what it does is it just elevates all schooling for the people in that area, because as we know in all markets, it seems like, why wouldn't it be true for schooling? Competition increases the quality of the item and lowers the price. That's how it works everywhere, right?
Pretty much, Scott. All right, Scott, if you want to read more about this, you can head over to libertynation.com to check out Scott's exclusive interview and amazing article on the topic. Other than that, thanks for joining us, Scott.
Cheers, Mark.
And thanks to you at home.
Go deeper on the topic discussed in this video, head on over to one of these links here or go to our Liberty Nation Roku channel. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for Liberty.